This is going to be a fun video to make because I am going to pretty much be decking the Xbox as much as humanly possible in this single video. So basically, it's this Eurogamer article here, and of course a lot of other places have reported that the Xbox Series S and X are trailing behind the Xbox One, but PS5 is starting to, if not close to, outpacing the PS4. So with all of that being said, it's crazy to see how in the current generation that we're in right now, I thought, okay, maybe hardware sales are actually, slowing down for both platforms. But no, in fact, it seems like Xbox Series S and X are slowing to a crawl, and if they're selling less than what the Xbox One did in the same amount of time, but the PS5 is selling more than the PS4 did at around the same time, it really makes you wonder what on earth went incredibly wrong between these two main console competitors. So 4 years after its launch, the US sales of Xbox Series S and X are trailing behind the predecessor Xbox One. At the same time, in the same point of the console's life cycle, sales of PS5, however, are firmly outpacing PS4, and that is according to market research technology company Circana, which is formerly known as the NPD Group. And just to kind of give a bit of a perspective, the NPD Group is the guys that do the market research, get the numbers, and put out reports each month to say, here are the 10, if not 20 best-selling games. And they also have industry analysts there to start predicting, like, okay, here are what the sales were previously, here's how long we're in the life cycle compared to other generations, and currently where we're at in this generation, what is the future looking like for both platforms, what does the market look like it's going to be, or how are the dominoes going to fall in the industry, both in terms of sales, numbers, and, possible things that could happen. And that's all well and good. It's just insane to think again that PlayStation is outperforming Xbox in such a way that even when PlayStation does screw up, Xbox seems to screw up even harder and lets PlayStation ultimately take a victory in something that PlayStation should have just taken a loss on. And just to kind of give a bit of a perspective, this Wall Street Journal chart actually really puts into perspective just how far behind Xbox is on the ball when it comes to just everything. So, the PlayStation 2 sold 155 million as of the reporting of this article, by the way, which was on September 18th, 2024. So this was at least 3-4 months ago, I want to say, where we have this chart here that says that the PlayStation 2 sold 155 million, which we now has since been updated to 160 million, but we'll use these older numbers just to give some perspective. The Xbox sold 24.7 million, which doesn't even dent the PlayStation 2, but keeping in mind that the PlayStation 1, I should say, established Sony in the console space, and Xbox was the new guy. Then we had the 360 generation, which everyone, thought Xbox has won. Xbox is the greatest console of all time with the 360. But in a surprise upset, PlayStation 3 took it in the end at 87.4 million to Xbox 360's 84.9 million. Now, the Xbox had also been on the market for a year longer than the PlayStation 3. And so it's crazy to think, okay, sure, whatever, like, fairly close competition. I'm sure it can't get worse than that. PlayStation 4 sold 117 million and Xbox sold 57.9, not even cracking halfway. And keeping in mind, the Xbox One came out a month earlier than the PlayStation 4. It came out, I think, at the beginning of November, and no, actually, it was a week difference, actually. Well, even with a week ahead of PlayStation 4, they still did not even manage to sell half as many consoles. And with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S and X, PlayStation 5 is sitting at 61.7 million, while Xbox Series of consoles is sitting at 28.3, which again is less than a half of hardware sales against the PlayStation. And you might be thinking, okay, The idea of selling consoles is not the name of the game anymore, it's all about subscriptions. And then we talk about the negative impact Xbox Game Pass has had on the gaming industry as we look at this The Gamer article that was published about almost 3 weeks ago. Xbox Game Pass releases can reportedly expect to lose 80% of premium sales. And this is largely in no small part to how Xbox has now conditioned their customers into expecting games to drop on Game Pass. Sure, they've had some massive hitters in the past, and the fact that they're dropping all of their first party on Game Pass, and as time continues to pass, Xbox are in fact doubling down on the Game Pass strategy in an attempt to hit 100 million Game Pass subscribers by 2030. Was it 100 million or 200 million? It was something incredibly high. Game Pass can boost multi-platform sales due to the boost in players on Xbox, but the thing is that these sales are largely being cannibalized, and that largely has to do. Well, all this information is actually coming from Christopher Dring, who did an industry Q&A, and I've got it right here on the installbaseforum.com, which is where he did this Q&A, and this is a big question that was asked, and I'm going to go through Christopher Dring's answer, because this is a guy who can actually be trusted in actually taking information and being able to supply it in a good way about how the industry works, how numbers are working regards to sales of not just software, not just consoles, but also in regards to subscriptions and how the industry has changed, and how pretty much he's kind of like the man when it comes to summing up information about the industry from a financial perspective. When I say industry, I'm talking specifically the game industry. So as for someone without access to the numbers, I always wonder how much popular sentiment aligns with market perception. So pretty much how we as people who look at the industry have no idea how things work, but still try to guess, is what we're saying actually, or guessing, actually reflective of what's happening in the industry from a numbers perspective. And the person who's asking the question to Christopher Dring is wondering about subscription services, and just being purely additive, or the sentiment feeling a lot more dour. Pretty much what the heck is going on based on someone who actually has the numbers and data and information. So he answers like this: anecdotally, games that are in Game Pass can expect to lose 80% of its expected premium sales on Xbox. That's the figure that gets thrown around. It's less if it's a big mainstream release, but generally, look at how Hellblade 2 charted, or where Indiana Jones came. How low Hellblade 2 charted, or where Indiana Jones came, or even Starfield. Game Pass clearly hurt sales of those titles on Xbox. But if it's a game on multiple platforms, it can be beneficial. The surge in players on one Xbox can have a strong impact on sales on PlayStation, for instance. I'm actually torn on subscriptions. I believe it can lead to lost revenue, and services like this can make it harder for everyone else. Try being an indie game on Xbox right now that's not on Game Pass. But also, getting people to play your game in 2024, 2025 is so hard, and subscriptions get games in front of lots of people. We know from data that a lot of people can only play Call of Duty, and if some of those people decided to get Call of Duty this year via Game Pass, then those very same people took the opportunity to play some other games on Game Pass. Games they wouldn't have otherwise played. It's hard to argue if that's a bad thing. And that's very much a very on the fence answer. And as trajectory wise, although subscriptions have a decent audience, that's not been too much growth recently. We're waiting to see Call of Duty's impact. Of course, Call of Duty for the first time has dropped on Game Pass as a new release, so whether or not that actually is reflective of the industry, that's a completely separate question. But he continues, in a world where the biggest games are free and hundreds of hours long, the idea that majority of gamers will be accessing their games via a sub service seems fanciful. So he's not he's not a fan of this at all, which is very, very, very interesting to see. And I very much agree. Again, I feel like if you ask most Xbox players from their perspective, hey, you know, are you going to buy this huge cool game that's coming out, or are you going to try this game out? And more often than not, I feel like most people are going to look at you and say, why would I do that? I'm just going to wait for it to come on Game Pass. And that sort of sentiment makes me incredibly angry, because people are not going to be willing to shell out money for games anymore, even if those games are significantly discounted, because if they're paying for a subscription, they're going to want their value to come out more so from those subscription models. And what really doesn't help matters is things like the Activision acquisition, or acquiring ZeniMax with, like, you know, the Bethesda games and things like that. And I mean, the fact that you can kind of make okay games and have that do decently well only because you have people buy, you know, through a, well, not even buy, but just try through a subscription service, it really, really doesn't help matters. But, like, hey, if you're not successful on your own platform, you know what you can do? You can go onto someone else's platform and go from there. And that's where we have Microsoft executives, you know, talking about the idea of Project Latitude. So to kind of provide a bit of context around what Project Latitude is, it's basically bringing major titles to other platforms like the PS5, like the Switch, in order to try and make up for the loss of revenue from the console market by putting Xbox exclusives, or games you would have thought would, like, fall under IP that are owned by Microsoft and Xbox, to be put on other platforms. So seeing games like Hi-Fi Rush, like Grounded, being made by first-party studios, albeit that, you know, I don't think we can call a Hi-Fi Rush a first-party title anymore from Xbox, because they technically shut down the studio behind them, which is really unfortunate. Never forget Tango Gameworks, because while they have been revived, who knows if they are still the same entity that we remember them for when it comes to things like The Evil Within, Evil Within 2, Ghostwire Tokyo, and now Hi-Fi Rush. So it's really unfortunate that even good games just aren't good enough for Microsoft, because people are just not buying games. Instead, they're waiting for games to come on Game Pass instead of playing them. And it's also worth keeping in mind that with Microsoft's developer direct, that they did this year in January 2025, all of the games that were shown except for South of Midnight are coming to PlayStation 5 and have been confirmed to, even if they didn't mention it in the developer direct. Because when it comes to stuff like Ninja Gaiden Black 2, or 2 Black, or whatever it is, Ninja Gaiden 4, those two are one has already come to PlayStation, the other is going to be coming to PlayStation, but there was no mention of PS5, I don't think, for that game, or the other game, the turn-based Expedition 33, that was the one. That one had no mention of PS5, but it is coming to PS5, so it is worth keeping in mind. But the basic idea of Project Latitude is that there is no red line on what IP can go on what platforms. And so if, for whatever reason, Xbox sales are declining immensely in terms of hardware, falling so far behind that PlayStation are absolutely destroying them, and of course subsequently the Switch completely destroying the PlayStation and Xbox, let's not even forget that, to the fact that Xbox is doing even more poorly now while PlayStation is starting to really pick up on sales, to the fact that, hey, no, the fight isn't about, you know, console sales, it's about subscriptions. The fact that subscriptions aren't really even doing it for Xbox either, given how they're giving out all of their games, and the fact that it's actually doing a far more negative impact on the industry, based on even industry analysts and experts that are talking about it. And I'm using Christopher Dring, who was again one of the guys from gamesindustry.biz, that I feel like is probably one of the more trusted individuals that I feel like we, can be trusted when it comes to actually making thoughtful critiques on the actual industry, to then talking about the fact that no IP is sacred under the Xbox banner as they all come to various platforms. It really makes me wonder what on earth is going on in regards to Xbox. What are they doing? I just really fail to understand what on earth they're trying to do. And on top of that, this is an Xbox campaign does not help matters either. Campaign. Yes, this is an Xbox campaign really doesn't help matters, because now everything that has a screen on it is an Xbox. Then are you going to count every phone, every TV, every laptop, every computer as a sales metric for Microsoft? I just don't get what the hell they're doing. Xbox is completely off their rockers, and the fact that they're even considering making a new Xbox, another console, completely ditching the current generation and moving on to the next like it's absolutely nothing, is just absolutely shocking. Because they've already lost this generation. There's no way in hell they're ever going to come back. There was no way in hell they were ever going to come back the previous generation. But the generation before that, they were actually competitive with the Xbox 360 and the PS3 going head to head. But the only reason that was even the case was because the PS3 shot itself in the foot. But then the following generation, Xbox were the ones to shoot themselves in the foot. What happened? Why did the quality of games drop so significantly during the Xbox One generation, and the PS3 to PS4 generation? We had some really good first party titles. What happened? Why are games so mismanaged and so expensive to make? What are Xbox doing? And where is all of this going to go and ultimately lead? It is just shocking to see what is going on, and I cannot begin to predict how the entire industry is going to fall. I just thought that this was an absolutely fascinating thing to talk about, and I knew that this was also going to be a relatively lengthy video because there was so much to kind of try and tackle. And even then, I also shortened or summarized some bits and pieces. I'm pretty sure I could get into even more detail about a lot of other things that are going on. Like, for example, that this is an Xbox campaign. It is just insane to think about. But with all of that being said, however, let me know what you guys think about all of this that's going on. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. And with all of that being said, I do upload every day. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.